Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I travelled back through time to do this review.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss Donnie Darko, which came out in 2001 from writer-director Richard Kelly. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for Donnie Darko?
Well, the story follows Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Donnie Darko. Donnie is suffering from some hallucinations in which he sees a 6-foot rabbit called Frank that tells Donnie that the world will come to an end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes and 12 seconds. While he is giving Donnie this information, a jet engine crashes into Donnie's bedroom. As the film progresses, we realise that there is a larger connection between Frank, Donnie, the jet engine, and all the other multitude of characters that we will see as the film goes on.
When this film came out back in 2001, it shook the film industry almost by storm, because almost everybody that you approached had seen or was talking about Donnie Darko and trying to unravel the great mystery about what the hell that film was about. And then in 2004, writer-director Richard Kelly was asked to do a director's cut for the film, which obviously he did, and then we had almost an extra 30 minutes restored back into the film.
Yeah.
That's the version that we are going to be reviewing today.
I remember this film coming out, and, like Gary said, a lot of people were like, have you seen Donnie Darko? You've got to watch Donnie Darko. And I was just like, it sounds so cheap. Sounds like a superhero movie. Who's it got in it? Oh, it's got Jake Gyllenhaal. Who? Who the fuck's Jake Gyllenhaal? Oh, it's got Drew Barrymore. Oh, is that the bitch from E.T.? Oh, yeah, I like her. It's got Patrick Swayze in it. Oh, Jesus Christ, Patrick Swayze hasn't done a film since fucking Dirty Dancing. What kind of film am I sitting down to watch? And so then I sat down and watched it on my own. And at the end, I was like, whoa, that is possibly one of the greatest movies ever made. The film's core is a mystery. You're not sitting down and having this movie to explain to you. Like Gary said, we're reviewing the director's cut now, but the original film I watched, it left me with so many questions that I had to answer myself. The internet was just being birthed in 2001, really getting off the ground. So there weren't forums. You couldn't go to Wikipedia and spoil it for yourself and learn all the history about the film, about how it's built up. You had to literally sit there and go, right, hold on, if that's this and this is that, and now that is putting into this, then that would mean, and then you give yourself the answer. But sitting there and watching the film yourself, the performances by the actors, the detail in the setting, and just the amazing story behind it just makes this film fucking stand out above everything else.
Speaking of the setting, I really do like the Virginia setting for the film, but what I really like is the fact that it's set in the 80s.
Yes.
And this is because Richard Kelly didn't know how to write teens of the modern time.
Right, yeah.
So he's like, if I try writing teenagers now, they're not going to speak like this or sound like this. So I'm going to write my characters based on when I had the most experience of being a kid. So he said it in the 80s, and I just think that time setting and the location really also works for Donnie Darko.
Oh, before we even get into film, just the soundtrack alone, like we said, it's 1988, you've got Reagan going for presidency, the parents want their kids to just go off to college and enjoy themselves, and you've forever got this brilliant soundtrack playing in the background.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the songs that are in the theatrical version are not in the director's cut version. Some of the songs have changed, or the order in which they are played is different.
Yeah.
So there's some people that would prefer to watch the theatrical version because that's the music score that they prefer over the director's cut. And then there are some people that would prefer to watch the theatrical version because it doesn't explain everything to you and it leaves it for your own interpretation. So there's sort of two reasons as to why you would want to choose either version of the film to watch.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
You start with the mystery of Donnie. You know, the film literally starts with him waking up on a highway road in his pajamas. You know, he has sleepwalked or sleep rode, actually. He rode a bike out there, you know. And immediately you're like, why is he there? What's he doing? Who is this? Where is he? You know, we follow Jake back to his family and, you know, like we said, late 80s, you know, middle American family, 2.4 children or whatever, you know, and they're just going along with their life. You realize that there is an issue with Donnie because the family are a bit standing on eggshells around him, I suppose, you know, because you have that family dinner where they're sat down, and I think it's an amazing idea by the director to get Maggie Gyllenhaal and Jake Gyllenhaal as brother and sister in the film.
Well, incidentally, Maggie Gyllenhaal wasn't originally attached to the film. She was working on another project and, of course, was a relatively unknown actress at the time.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be that her schedule was free. And so she turned up and Richard Kelly was like, yeah, you're going to play his real-life sister. And well, you're going to play his sister in the film, and it works because the chemistry between the two of them is just brilliant. You could tell that they might have had this sort of back and forth in their own home.
Yes.
And it really sells the characters to you, invests you in them, and it makes you feel like you're sat at that dinner table with them.
You're such a fuck ass.
What?
Please.
Did you just call me a fuck ass?
Elizabeth, that's enough.
You can go suck a fuck.
Mary McDonnell, she is just a fantastic actress, and she's not had that much screen time in film, but her few appearances in the films that she have been iconic. And that's, for me, mainly because of Dances with Wolves and Battlestar Galactica.
Yes, she will always be the mum character to me. You know, she's the mum in this. She was a surrogate mother to everybody in Battlestar Galactica. And even to a point, you know, I'll probably get some hate for this, even to a point, her appearance in Independence Day. You know, I do shed a tear every now and again when I watch that film and I see her die, because I'm like, no, because you keep dying in all my shit. Stop dying, woman. But yes, her mother character, especially the interaction that she has with Donnie right at the beginning, where, you know, she walks into his room and he's like, I'm reading, get out. And I'm thinking, if that was my kid, I'd have fucking beat him with his book. But, you know, there's a history there. He's been aggressive and violent and destructive at a young age. So they're trying an approach where they don't anger him. And then I like the way that as she walks out, he calls her a bitch. And there's that moment where she stood out in the hallway thinking about going back. And he sat in his bed kind of wanting her to come back because he wants that interaction. And then he looks kind of bit upset that she doesn't. And she chooses not to.
Well, I like, there's kind of a running thread throughout the film where Donnie is a superior intellect to everybody else in the film. He's the smartest person in the film. And every time somebody is trying to teach him something or inform him about something, he'll argue it, and the other person usually has nothing to come back to it. And because often or not the people he's arguing with are authoritarian characters, he often gets escorted out. He has to have his parents brought in at the school board to review his attitude. He has to go and see a psychiatrist. And a lot of people are aware of how intelligent Donnie is, but they also know that they don't want to piss him off. Yeah. Because he'll go off on one and have to go and take his meds again. So you do it is an interesting balance, and watching the drama play out is just, it's there on the surface level, masking everything else that's going on behind the film, which relates to the space-time continuum, time travel, does God exist, and
wormholes,
and all these other brilliant sci-fi, conventions. And the marriage of the two of them together really, really works.
Why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit?
Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
It's an amazing start the first time you meet Frank. Frank is a fucking scary character and will probably always go down in film history as a fucking scary character.
He is one of the most... He's the cover boy for the poster. He's absolutely iconic. Just the sculpture and the design of the face of that bunny suit.
Yeah. And the voice, the audio that comes along as it lures Donnie out of the house. You know, tells him to come closer and then explains to him that the world will end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes and 12 seconds. And you're like, just like Donnie, you're like, why? And then it cuts right back to the house. You know, Elizabeth has just come in because she's just hooked up with her boyfriend. The dad is asleep on the sofa looking at stuff about the presidential election. The mum's asleep in bed. And then smash! This jet engine crashes through the bedroom of Donnie. You know, and you're sat there like, shit, you know, if he'd been in there, he'd have been killed.
So evidently, Frank, whoever it is, saved Donnie by calling him out of the house in time before he would have been flattened.
Yeah.
And there basically starts what we can understand the creation of the tangent universe. Now, I'm not a scientist, but I've seen enough time travel movies to sort of understand what's going on. And the tangent universe, for all intents and purposes, is an identical universe to our own.
Yeah.
Except for one small glitch, which would be, in this instance, the jet engine, which shouldn't be there because obviously no plane suddenly went, oh shit, I've lost my engine and crashed. Because the authorities go, yeah, we don't know where this thing's come from, so we're going to cart it off and don't tell anyone about it. We're going to cover this up.
Yeah.
And so, so this tangent universe is created with this glitch in it, and as a result, Donnie has been saved from this incident, which sort of makes him the living receiver for whatever possibly caused this glitch, or for time-space beings, whether it's future people, or aliens, or God, saved Donnie in order to rectify the situation, restore balance, before the tangent universe implodes on itself, wiping out all of existence. And all existence in the real world, the normal plane of existence.
Shut up!
And it's fairly convoluted and quite complicated to think about, but if you do look at it like on a graph, it sort of makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And obviously, the director's cut of the film incorporates pages of the Philosophy of Time Travel, which is a book given to Donnie in the film, which is also on the DVD somewhere as well, which if you read it, absolutely correlates to everything that we see visually in the film. It's kind of like the blueprint of time travel for Donnie Darko. And it really does explain everything. And then what you're doing watching the film is unraveling this mystery of how everything is being affected. Who are the agents that are trying to help Donnie restore the balance, and who are the ones that are trying to oppose him?
Yeah, yeah. Gary's explanation there of the movie is basically what we have gathered and understood from the director over the last, 16 years since the film was released. And it's funny because I understood it as soon as the film ended the first time I watched it. You know, because the theatrical version and Richard Kelly explained the movie in such a way that the only question I sat there at the end with was, how did Frank get into this whole situation? And we will get to Frank's point of the story later on, but you know, that was the only question I got. The whole time travel, wormhole, Einstein-Rosenberg bridge, you know, the jet engine, the artifact, the living receiver, the insured dead or dead insurance or whatever, that stuff is explained to you as the movie goes on, because you can tell that Donnie knows something is up, and he's finding it difficult to explain to people that something is up, because people are like, what do you mean you're seeing a 6-foot rabbit called Frank? You're insane.
Keep taking your pills, Donnie.
Keep taking your pills. Yeah, for Donnie, it's not fake, because, you know, he's finding himself in situations where he's trying to confront Frank. You know, he's finding that he can't touch him. there's an invisible force field between the two of them. Frank is explaining to him, hey, I can do whatever the fuck I want, you know, but you kind of owe me, you know, you owe me something. I'm going to reveal all these truths to you, you know, by saying to Donnie, right, okay, Donnie, wake up. We're going to the school. You know, we're going to flood the school exactly like the way that you read it in the book given to you by your teacher, Drew Barrymore. You know, we're going to go to the house of Jim Cunningham, Patrick Swayze's character, and we're going to burn that place down because, well, you know, we're going to reveal some truths about him. And just the interactions that Donnie has with the multitude of characters throughout the film, that each one of them just has a realization about their life that they had no idea about before Donnie came along and did these things. Like we said, Donnie was destined to walk that particular way to come across Gretchen.
Well, only because the school was flooded. And
yes.
So meeting Gretchen, who would become a significant and important part in Donnie Darko's life.
Yes.
In terms of making sure that he also is where he needs to be, and she is also a catalyst for Donnie eventually deciding, oh, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do in order to restore the balance.
Yeah.
And obviously also him burning down Jim Cunningham's house. Obviously it does reveal this whole kiddie porn pedophilia ring, library of stash or whatever.
Yes.
But what that causes is a knock-on effect where Donnie's mother, who now needs to take her daughter to the Sparkle Motion performance.
Yeah, the dance performance in Los Angeles.
So she needs to get on a plane, which is also the same plane which Donnie would go, I'm going to borrow your engine and drop it back on the family house in order to restore the balance.
Yeah, 28 days in the past.
But the film says that the living receiver will inherit powers, that they'll be haunted by dreams, which we see, that they'll see bizarre hallucinations, which like Frank and like the spear of
the abyss tentacle, I call it.
Yeah, that's a good word. And that he would also struggle with the fact that he could be pulled into oblivion. But it also explains that he'll have incredible powers. And it's obviously these powers that we see him creating towards the end of the film, where we see the sort of vortex, the beginnings of a black hole appearing right above his house, which is obviously the vortex or the time travel displacement that he'd use to eventually drop that engine right on top of his house. So I always thought it was sort of a natural phenomenon occurring, but the more I watch it, I think, no, Donnie's got the power because he's at this point realised what he needs to do and is now making it happen.
See, for me, it's not Donnie doing that. That is the end of the universe. You know, for me, Donnie's character he's got these powers. He's received this artifact from the future, and he's obviously speaking to Frank, and he's given the choice that, you know, you have that choice. Do you want to save everything in existence and everything in the known universe, or do you just want to let it blow up? You know, to see what happens.
So you could say that in both of those regards, you could say he has the choice to create the vortex, which will end the film, or to not create it, or the vortex has been made naturally because it's waiting to realign itself.
Yes.
And Donnie then has the choice of getting back into his bed, or staying outside again, just to see what happens. And so he does have a choice.
Yeah, but he makes that conscious decision after what happens to Gretchen. Gretchen, played by Jena Malone, has just turned up into town. You know, she explains, it's a brilliant little backstory, actually. You know, sometimes you get kind of oversaturated by too many character arcs, but her character arc is basically, you know, my stepdad stabbed my mum. We've kind of had to change our names. We've moved to a small town to get away from him. And, you know, she's looking for somebody to kind of feel comfortable and safe around. And she feels, and weirdly enough, she feels safe around Donnie, who's seeing a 6-foot rabbit. Okay, you know, but the relationship blossoms.
I love their blooming relationship. I gotta say, I think the first sequence is very, very awkward, and that is to go, hey, you're the new girl. Okay, sit next to the guy who you think's the hottest.
sit next to the boy you think is the cutest.
Quiet.
Oh my god.
Like, wow, that's really, really... You shouldn't do that, teachers.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Because there's an awkward situation where you got all these students, like, you know,
Yeah.
adjusting their collars and checking their hair, like, sit next to me, baby.
It's even worse when when Drew Barrymore says to that girl, "You get up and move," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" There's a guy on the other side of Donnie who looks like he's half asleep. Why don't you get him up? You know, you're gonna pick on this poor girl who's actually trying to answer. But Jena Malone's character, Gretchen, you know, she in a weird way, I feel like she anchors Donnie. She's trying to get him back into the real world. You know, she even though he's seeing all this stuff going along, she's like, look, I just want you to be with me. You know, I just want us to have a normal relationship. I don't want to be like my mum, you know, and things like that. And so as the film progresses and things happen, and she is, you know, Donnie realizes that he's in love with her and that her existence will come to an end. That ultimately changes him more than what happens to his family. The side characters, like we said, we've already brought up Drew Barrymore in this. Oh my lordy lord. She is not only phenomenally hot in this movie, but she's one of those you wish you had her as a teacher.
Yep.
You know, she's teaching them English, and she's teaching them the destructors. And so when the other teacher decides that, oh, we're going to have this pornography removed from the school, I'm like, that's the kind of teacher you don't want to have. You know, you want your kids to learn everything and anything that they can so that they can make their own decisions on it. If you're making your decisions for them, they're not going to learn. They're just going to end up just doing exactly what you did, which, you know, sometimes is a failure. You've got Drew Barrymore's character's boyfriend, Noah Weil. Now, he hasn't really done a lot, but he was a phenomenal doctor in ER. You know, I was at a very young age when ER started, but I was still watching it because of these phenomenal characters. And his conversations he has with Donnie about time travel and God and things like that, that's what helped me understand the movie the first time round, because, you know, I was the guy kind of stood in between them like, what are you talking about?
If we were able to see our destinies manifest themselves visually, then we would be given a choice to betray our chosen destinies. And the mere fact that this choice exists would make all preformed destiny come to an end.
Not if you travel within God's channel.
And he explains it, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. What are you talking about now? And then Donnie explains it, and I'm like, all right, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. One of you's making sense, you know.
I wasn't quite sure, though, at the end of the conversation why the teacher was like, yeah, I can't continue this conversation, I'll lose my job.
I feel it's... Donnie had brought up the aspect of God and religion, and I don't believe as a science teacher that's where his faith lies. So if he had carried on with the conversation and argued or caused any issues, you know, after what his girlfriend has already going through with the book, you know, there's a high chance he could lose his job, because as the film progressed, Drew Barrymore loses her job, you know, and she sat there in that office with the teacher and says to him, you know, what's wrong with my teaching methods? And the head teacher goes, thank you, you can finish off the rest of the week, goodbye. You know, and you're like, you're just getting rid of her because she's this new wave of thinking, you know, which Noah Weil's character is as well. He doesn't want to tell people that he doesn't believe in God, because this fucking Kitty Marrow character is running around with t-shirts on saying God is awesome.
Well, she's been put under the spell of Jim Cunningham, who is this motivational speaker.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, I like Patrick Swayze. I like quite a lot of his films.
Yes.
He's a very charismatic and likable actor, and he brings that flair and that energy to this character as well. Yet when you're watching him on screen, he's the sort of person you really want to punch.
Oh yeah, yeah. But this is why when I watched this film and I saw Patrick Swayze in this, it made me want to go back and watch things like Roadhouse and Dirty Dancing, you know, and some of his lesser known films, just because he put his heart and soul into his performances. Those video montages we see, those were amazingly filmed because they're so cheesy
and so 80s.
So 80s and so put on. That final sequence in one of the videos where the boom mic drops down, I was like, am I seeing it? Yes, they actually filmed that. It worked so well. And then when you see him on stage, and you know, we've all seen these evangelist motivational speakers who are like, you're going into fear, you need to get away from fear and look into yourself, and he repeats himself because, well, it works, you know, up until the point you get somebody like Donnie who steps up and says exactly what you want to say or want somebody to say to him, to the point where he turns around and goes, I think you're the fucking Antichrist. And I'm like, yeah, Donnie, yeah!
You're right, actually. I am I'm pretty troubled and I'm pretty confused, but I'm afraid, really afraid. Really afraid, but I think you're the fucking Antichrist.
Two other minor characters I have to bring up quickly, which I'd never noticed. I don't think I would have brought them up 15 years ago when I first saw the film, because they would have been overshadowed. But you have Sharita Chin, the Chinese character. She's just, this actress was just brilliant. She has like one word, two words.
Shut up!
She just says shut up to every time somebody talks to her. You know, either they're being abusive or they're being nice. She tells them to shut up. And it's kind of like that dance performance she does on stage as well. Reminds me a bit of Napoleon Dynamite's dance. And yet, her character is kind of, with everything going on, with all the craziness going on, her character is like the most normal, maybe. The most fun. The humorous character.
I love the fact that she's just always there. Like, another character will be going through extreme emotional turmoil, and they'll turn around, and then she's just there, just watching them. It's like when Drew Barrymore gets fired, she comes out and screams, and she turns around, and she's sat there. When Donnie gets kicked out, he comes out, and he walks into the corridor, and she's just stood there.
Yeah.
And I love that moment where he realises that she's had a crush on him this entire time.
Yeah.
And she goes running home screaming.
Yeah,
I thought that was so sweet.
He tells her that everything's going to be okay because he's realised that certain things that he has to do. But one of the extra characters I never realised was in this was Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
Oh my fucking god!
Yes.
You know?
I love his line when him and the other bully sort of perving on Gretchen, and he just goes, I like your boobs. Like,
Yeah.
Seth Rogen's first line in film, everyone.
Has anyone ever told you that you're sexy? I like your boobs.
That's it. I was just like, you know, I've grown to enjoy Seth Rogen as time has gone on. Yeah, okay, he has just done some mainstream comedies here and there, but when he picks up the pen and paper and writes, you know, he puts a lot of effort into it, and either you really, really enjoy it because you like Seth Rogen, or you don't, and that's because you don't like him. But seeing him in this, I was like, holy fuck, dude, how did I not realise that? How have I read up on you and studied you and not realised that your first fucking performance was in fucking Donnie Darko? And the fact, one of the coolest camera shots I feel in the film is when Donnie first turns up at school, you know, and he steps off the bus and he goes up the stairs, and you're following this camera as it flowing through all the different characters, and you get Seth going up to Seth Rogen. I can't remember what Seth Rogen's character is called, but he's got his buddy Seth, and they're doing coke in the corridor, and I'm like, you really need to get on top of this, teachers. This is not so good.
So one of my other favourite side characters, who I think is the most interesting side character that doesn't get too much explanation, just enough.
Yeah.
And that's Grandma Death.
Oh, yeah.
And she's dropped near enough at the beginning of the film as the family almost run her over. And the characters sort of talk about her later on as this crazy old lady who walks back and forth this street endlessly, checking her mailbox.
Yeah.
And then as the film would progress, would find out that she was the author of the philosophy of time travel and was actually a teacher at Donnie's school. And making that connection, Donnie instantly realizes that maybe she's in some kind of time loop, that she's waiting for a letter that will never come.
Yeah.
Maybe she's been set on this path all along in order for Donnie to also, as a result of burning Cunningham's house down, as the result of seeing cellar door written on his teacher's wall, going to Roberta Sparrow's house, who is Grandma Death, going in through the cellar door, leaving a letter, because he does say to his friends who do sort of pick on and cast down upon Grandma Death, he says, I'm going to write her a letter. And it's, of course, she is receiving that letter at the point that Gretchen is hit by a car at the end of the film. So we're seeing all of these things get set up in order to be knocked down, in order for Donnie to get to where he needs to go to at the end of the film and make his choice. So I really like the Grandma Death character. I love the fact that she may have had this experience happen to her once before. I find it a little bit strange of a coincidence that it happened to the same person from the same school in the same town, who they would therefore then write this book about everything that happened.
Well, that's the weird thing as well, because it's told to you that she used to be a nun. She was a nun that became a teacher, so she's gone with a religious aspect, realised that, maybe God does or doesn't exist, maybe something's proved to her, so she's become a teacher to learn these things about time travel.
Absolutely. So I'm like, that's a whole nother Donnie Darko story right there, which is just as fascinating as this one. And so I love that it overlaps and it does give you more food for thought.
Yeah. Finally, like I said, I'd get to it, is the Frank character. It's revealed to you halfway through the film while Gretchen and Donnie are watching The Evil Dead on fucking in the cinema.
I just got to say now that Richard Kelly was like, I need to have them going into a film. I want to use The Evil Dead. Hey Sam Raimi, can I use The Evil Dead? And Sam Raimi just went, yeah, use as much as you want, just splice it up a little bit, and no payment necessary. There you go.
Yeah,
it's like,
awesome. And Frank is at the cinema with them, and so Donnie confronts him about why he wears this bunny suit, and Frank removes the mask to reveal a young teenage boy underneath it with a wound to his eye that looks actually quite tragic, like he's died from this wound.
This Frank character is also Donnie's sister's boyfriend.
Yes, and like we said, it's a knock-on effect that as Grandma Death picks up the letter given to her by Donnie, the car in which Frank is driving just narrowly misses her and kills Gretchen, which in turn sends Donnie over the edge to use his father's gun to shoot Frank in the eye and kill him. And this is the only point where I kind of get a bit weirded out, because I can kind of understand the time traveling of the jet engine, the aspect of Donnie, and it's trying to work out, was it at that point that the spirit of Frank traveled, as soon as Frank died, the spirit of him went back to October 2nd, because, all the death happens on Halloween night. And it's 28 days before October 2nd is when Frank first delivers the message to Donnie and pulls him out of the house. And so I'm like, so your spirit traveled back through time to pull him out of the house so that you can show him all these possible events of things that happen, just to make him decide if he wants them to happen and destroy the known universe, or if he should travel back in time to October 2nd and die with a jet engine so that all these things don't happen.
Yes.
Right. Okay, as long as we cleared that up.
I hope that when the world comes to an end, I can breathe a sigh of relief, because there will be so much to look forward to.
Which then, yes, does lead us to the end of the film, which is actually one of my favourite sequences, as Donnie has decided that, yes, I'm going to restore the balance. He is heartbroken that Gretchen has died.
Yeah.
He's upset with the state of the world. He understands and realizes what he needs to do. All of the manipulated living and dead have done their jobs. The insurance policy is there that Donnie will now go and sacrifice himself to save the known universe. And people are often wondering why he gets into bed and is laughing almost hysterically. And I put that down to the fact that because he makes the choice, and then we do jump back to the 2nd of October, and that is when he is in bed laughing.
Yeah.
And as we see the other characters sort of having their reactions once the jet engine falls through, for me it's a case of Donnie has almost explicit memory of that month that has never happened.
Yeah.
And he's rejoicing in the fact that he knows his life is about to end. It's his choice, but he's saving the universe. You know, I think I'd be pretty chuffed as well.
Yeah.
Knowing,
yeah.
hey, I did that, and it's all going to be okay.
But it's so heartbreaking, you know, the next morning, because just before the whole ending, you know, he finally has that heart-to-heart with his dad out in the back garden, and his dad's saying, you're my only son, and he has this... They have this father-son speech about, you're so smart, Donnie, you're going to make all these other people shit themselves because they're not going to be able to keep up with you. He finally has that connection with his mother and gives her a hug and tells her that everything's going to be okay. You know, he's actually being a lot nicer to his 2 sisters. And you're like, oh, wow. But then when it ends and they're carting his body out, the memories are gone.
Well,
You
that's
know?
the thing. It does say in the director's cut and in the philosophy of time travel that those that were affected, once the universe has reset itself and you're back in the normal world, that a lot of them will have no memory at all.
Yeah.
Or it will be like the loose strings of a dream that you had the night before that you're trying to remember, but the colour's gone and the people and everything starts to melt away.
Yeah.
But we do see that some of them have the resonant feeling of what it was. And like I said, we see the Chinese girl. She's beaming. She is smiling. She is so happy. And that's because in that world, she got to do her talent show performance.
Yes.
She got the round of applause.
Yes.
She actually got some attention from Donnie Darko. So I can imagine that she's gonna, you know, she's quite happy.
But it's like the look on his mother's face, because
that's the real one.
Yeah, that's
because
the final thing, because the last thing they kind of said to each other was he called her a bitch.
Well, yeah, in the real world, yes, but at the same time, they resolved it, and he does, as you said, say to her, everything is going to be okay. So I'm like, she would either at this point be absolutely devastated, the loss of my only son, or she's smoking that cigarette like he told me. The last thing he said to me was everything's going to be okay, and she's sort of keeping her calm about it, sort of wondering whether she's trying to make sense of all of this jumbled dream that was reality or wasn't.
Yeah.
And then we get Gretchen's character who has what appeared to be the least amount of memory about what happened, because she doesn't even remember the family who lived there. Yet she somehow has a strange urge to wave to Donnie's mother, who does also in turn wave back, which is the suggestion of inherited memories of what didn't happen.
Yeah,
and that's
partially
kind of
a good feeling that maybe Donnie had left her with. You know that, you know, well, she was dead. She was literally dead like 20 minutes ago. But now, you know, Donnie has given his life so everybody else can live, including Gretchen. You know, the wake up of Patrick Swayze, who's in absolute fits of tears because, you know, for him, he'd been in prison.
Well, yeah, his house is still intact. His porn ring is still buried. And so nobody knows what's the truth. And so that realization from him is still shocking.
Yeah, I'm like, he's like, oh, you know, I need to change.
I think in an extended sequence or in the script or in something that he does actually shoot himself and commit suicide as a result of him being found out in the Tangent universe.
Yeah, you know, you got the Kitty Marrow's character waking up and she was trying to defend Patrick Swayze's character, but now she's woken up with a dream like, well, maybe possibly could be a pedophile. You know, Noah Wild's character waking up looking at Drew Barrymore like, okay, something's weird. And what I think is even better is Frank. You know, you see the designs of the rabbit mask, you see the rabbit mask on the floor, and then you see Frank's character kind of sitting there touching his eye like, what the fuck was that dream all about? It's phenomenal.
I gotta say, when Maggie Gyllenhaal is crying for a lost brother as well, I actually choked up, because it's like, wow, she's selling that really well. And of course you can only imagine her losing her brother and her real life brother.
Yes.
And she really sells that punchline when you see the body being put in the ambulance. Just And of course, you know that it's a triumphant ending, and you're trying to feel upbeat
You're trying to
that
feel
the
good.
universe was saved.
But you can't, because fucking Gary Jules' Mad World is playing to you, which is one of the most, you know, it's not a positive song.
No.
It's not a positive song.
Although it was a Christmas #1 at one point. Jeez, that was a cheery year. So, my favourite scene was the ending of the film. My second favourite scene is when Donnie's dad just tells him, fuck him.
Because those bullshitters know that you're smarter than all of them. You know what you say to people like that? Hmm? Fuck you.
I also like it when Donnie and Gretchen go and watch The Evil Dead in the cinema. It's just like, oh, if only I had that chance to travel back in time, I'd watch The Evil Dead in the cinema. My other favourite scene is a little bit different. It's when Donnie and his friends are discussing Smurf gangbangs.
Smurfette fucks all the other Smurfs. Why do you think Papa Smurf made her? It's because all the other Smurfs were getting too horny.
And I like the fact that Richard Kelly got hold of the creator of Smurfs and said, I want to include this scene in my film where we discuss Smurfette having a gangbang with the rest of the Smurfs. And he went, yeah, that's great. You've got my permission to talk about the Smurfs, and I'll tell you about the biology of them and who created who, so that you don't get any of the facts wrong.
First of all, Papa Smurf didn't create Smurfette. Gargamel did. She was sent in as Gargamel's evil spy with the intention of destroying the Smurf village. But the overwhelming goodness of the Smurf way of life transformed her.
And so then when Donnie unleashes all of this information against his friends and destroying their fantasy of a Smurf orgy, they're kind of just like, oh, well, I guess Smurfs don't have orgies then.
No.
So it's a very memorable moment in the film for me.
And as for the whole gangbang scenario, it just couldn't happen. Smurfs are asexual. They don't even have reproductive organs under those little white pants.
My favourite scenes, pretty much the whole movie from start to finish, but specific scenes, you know, I love the Frank setup. You know, not only just the first time you ever see him, but every subsequent sequence of Frank's appearance throughout the film. They are haunting, they are disturbing, but at the same time they keep the narrative of the story going. Every time you hear that voice or you see him there, something is going to happen. Donnie is going to do something, and then you're just waiting to see what the consequences are, what the after effects are of those situations. I love the camera flowing through the school, coming across all the different characters, Donnie, the bullies, his sister, the teachers, Gretchen. It just sets everything up from that point on. I love the sequence where Donnie tells the teacher to stick the lifeline into her anus. But I love the way that it's filmed. I love the build-up of the argument between themselves. And then he goes to say something and it cuts to the head teacher's office. The head teacher says, Donnie, why don't you tell me what you've said? And then the teacher says it instead in the most polite way ever.
I'll tell you what he said. He asked me to forcibly insert the lifeline exercise card into my anus.
And the dad laughs. And then covers it with a cough. Like, it was so brilliant. You can see Donnie in the background just smirking his ass off. It's so awesome. And then final scene would be Donnie seeing the tentacles, the abyss tentacles coming out of himself. You know, because it's the first time I saw it, I started to think like that. You know, you can't help but think, right, okay, are we all just destined to go that direction? I know I need to go to the shops, so I'm destined to go to the shops, but can I change the direction or change the shop that I go to? You know, it opens up your mind to all these questions of, you know, you're destined to do this.
And it's why I recommend the film. You know, this film is in the top 100 or top 50 films you have to see before you die.
Top 5.
It's a beautiful drama. It's fantastically told by this first-time director and screenwriter. The characters are brilliant. The music memorable. The location works. The time travel elements to it really works. It's not as simplistic as Back to the Future.
Yeah.
It's not as uber complicated as, say, Primer. The time travel aspects work within this film because it abides by its own rules, which it doesn't break. All of the explanations are in there. It doesn't matter really whether you want to watch the theatrical version or the director's cut. I would watch the director's cut because you get to spend more time with Donnie. You get to spend more time with the rest of the characters.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend watch Donnie Darko. It is a fantastic film that stands the test of time, that you can rewatch and still enjoy, discussing the philosophy of death, the fear of dying alone. Does God exist? Are we all fated to do what we need to do? Do tangent universes exist?
Yeah.
Can a rupture in the space-time continuum be broken like this? Can agents of the future or God fix it?
I definitely recommend Donnie Darko, but I would suggest watching the theatrical version. I watched the director's cut and it was just too much. Every now and again the chapters would appear and it would give me these big explanations, and I enjoyed reading it, but the fact that I'd already seen the film before the first time and understood the film meant that when I saw these things being told to me, I felt like the film was like, some people don't get this, okay, so we've got to explain it to you. And I'm like, look, if you do not get Donnie Darko by the end of watching the theatrical version, go back and watch it again and again. Like Gary said, it's up there with Back to the Future, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, any time travel movie you can ever think of. You will sit there at the end of every single one of them and go, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's time travel, okay? It doesn't make any sense. Because in a way it's completely impossible, but that's what makes it so beautiful, is that it's not impossible. Tangent universes probably do exist. I'm probably in another universe telling you not to watch this film. I don't know. I could be a 6-foot rabbit. I don't know. I'm going to lose it now.
You may not even be real.
Not even real. That's it. Yeah.
Shut up!
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere.
I'll tell you what he said. He asked me to forcibly insert the lifeline exercise card into my anus.